Hello, guys, and welcome to I Bit the Apples, third episode. This is Unknown Facts about Adam and Eve. So let's begin with Adam. How was Adam created?
Now the formation of Adam took place in this wise. On the sixth day, which is the eve of the Sabbath, at the first hour of the day, when quietness was reigning over all of the ranks of the angels and the hosts of heaven, God said, Come ye, let us make man in our image, and according to our likeness. Now by this word us, he maketh known concerning the glorious persons of the Trinity. And when angels heard the utterance, they fell unto a state of fear and trembling, and they said to one another, A mighty miracle will be made manifest to us this day, that is to say, the likeness of God, our Maker. And they saw the right hand of God opened out flat, and stretched it over the whole world, and all creatures were collected in the palm of his right hand. And they saw that he took from the whole mass of the earth 1 grain of dust, and from the whole nature of water 1 drop of water, and from all the air which is above 1 puff of wind, and from the whole nature of a fire of a little of its heat and warmth. And the angels saw that when these 4 feeble or inert materials were placed in the palm of his right hand, that is to say, cold and heat, dryness and moisture, God formed Adam. Now for what reason God did make Adam out of these 4 materials, unless show that everything which in the world should be subordination to him through them? He took a grain from the earth in order that everything in nature which is formed of the earth should be subject unto him, and a drop of water in order that everything which is in the seas and rivers should be his, and a puff of air, so that all kinds of creatures which fly in the air might be given unto him, and the heat of fire, so that all that beings fiery in nature and the celestial host might be his helpers.
So now we just heard about how God created Adam. He created Adam out of the 4 elements, and the last one was breathing the Spirit, the Holy Spirit into his nostrils. So what do you think about that?
I think it's really cool that, I think it's interesting as well that God created Adam using only 4 materials out of everything, and the meaning behind them all.
You said something that I wanted to say, that the meaning. I think it's really fascinating where these 4 elements come from, that they were used to create man. I think that's because in the Bible you just kind of read that man came out of dirt. No, man came out of a puff of air, a drop of water, a little spark of flame. He was made by the 4 elements. And that sounds pretty awesome to me.
Like, I think it definitely gives, like, the creation more depth than, like, what, like, it's just boring old stories. Like,
yes.
From what we're used to.
Oh, yes. So now, that's the creation of Adam. I think let's now go to the creation of Eve, okay?
And God cast a sleep upon Adam, and he slept. And God took a rib from the loins on the right side of Adam, and he made Eve from it. And when Adam woke up and saw Eve, he rejoiced in her greatly. And Adam and Eve were in paradise, and clothed with glory, and shining with praise for 3 hours. Now this paradise was situated on a high range of hills, and it was 30 spans, according to the measurement of the Spirit, higher than all the high mountains, and it surrounded the whole earth.
So you just told us about how Eve was made. Eve was made from Adam, from his rib, from his right side of his rib. And let's go to the Bible, the creation of woman. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. So what do you think about that?
I think you know how I feel about that. No. I don't know. I think it's, like, in a way, showing that, you know, man comes from the same way, or woman comes from the same way, like, from a man, and so initially they were created the same.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, in the passage that I read, it talks about how, like, once Adam woke up, like, they rejoiced, and they
Oh, yes.
for 3 hours. and how they were
And clothed with
Great.
glory and shining with praise for 3 hours. Yep.
like
But I like to, but this adds a lot to the deceiving of Eve, because if you read the first and second books of Adam and Eve, you find out how Adam, though he was made in the image of God, he was still, it's kind of unfair to say, but a child. He was still knowing right from wrong, and this makes it even more easier for Eve to be tempted, because Eve came out of Adam. Eve only knows what Adam knows, and Adam knows only what God tells him. So this is why it was very easy for Eve to be deceived, because she was gullible. But the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said unto the woman, Ye hath God said, He shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, Ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch it, lest ye die. So she knows that biting that fruit was bad. But what happened? It was the serpent's fault.
well, I mean, it definitely like connects to like unfortunately, like, yes, Adam was created in God's, perfect image, and in a perfect world, there would not be sin and there wouldn't be the devil. But unfortunately, God has put the devil, I believe, on the earth to tempt us and to test us. And although Eve was tempted, I do believe like her being deceived, like if it teaches us more than anything that we can learn from their mistakes.
Yes. I think we should all learn from their mistakes, not to be so gullible. But now on to what happened after the garden.
And when Adam and Eve had gone forth from paradise, the door of paradise was shut, and a cherub bearing a two-edged sword stood by it. According to the book of the bee, the cherub, or as some think, a terrible form, endowed with a body, was armed with a spear and sword, each being made of fire. And Adam and Eve went down of spirit over the mountains of paradise, and they found a cave in the top of the mountain, and they entered and hid themselves therein.
So now we're talking after the expulsion from the garden. Because Eve was deceived, and now Adam and Eve know right from wrong. So, after getting expulsed, they see a cherub with a flaming sword protecting the garden, the entrance. And they fear going there. They fear, in the first and second book of Adam and Eve, or the conflict of Adam and Eve, was saying, it states how when the cherub sees them threading on the ground, he kind of growls at them, and they fall to their death. I mean, they fall face down. They're scared. They're alone. They just got expelled from paradise. They were perfect, and now they're not. So that cherub actually goes to God and says, God, your creatures that you have made, they're lying on their face. What should I do? And God sends his word to Adam to rejoice and to uplift himself, that just because you have been expelled doesn't mean that you are doomed. What do you think about that?
I mean, there's definitely like like in the way that you explained it, like there's definitely hope. Like just because we sin doesn't mean we're automatically like doomed to eternal damnation.
We're not doomed for eternal damnation, but it sure feels like it, because God knew Adam and Eve were going to be expelled from the garden.
I know, and like it seems like kind of messed up. Like he knew like that was gonna happen. Like because he knows everything. Like he plans it all out. Like he knows everything in advance. But like he doesn't do anything that like doesn't need to happen. Like it's all in his plan, of
It's
course.
yes.
And I mean, if like of course like there is like the perfect world that God, did want and did create, but he in his own way like he knew that that wasn't gonna happen. Like he put sin in us. Like
There was a greater plan from the very beginning, and
yes.
that's hard to understand because we're not God. We don't know. We weren't there when He set the pillars of foundation of the earth. So after the garden, so Adam and Eve were perfect. They bit the apple. Now they know right from wrong, but they also transgressed and they sinned against God. So this is after the expulsion of the garden, and you haven't seen the movie, but there's a movie. Noah is it's about Noah. Has that famous actor I can't remember right now. But it actually, when I first saw it, I said, "Man, this movie is full of crap. Look how they represent Adam and Eve as golden figures, perfect as angels." And I said, "No, they were human. Everyone knows they had belly buttons, but." This is actually one of the closest images to Adam and Eve I guess we can get because they were perfect. It state in the book of Adam and Eve, it states that after being exposed, they started becoming human. They got hungry. They thirst for water. They developed organs. They weren't human. They were angels. They were something never seen before, and they sinned. But it's okay because God said there will be salvation for us. So that's after the garden. They're becoming human, just like we are now.
Like I feel like it's like even crazy to like even like I guess understand like the concept of them like not like what we see as human today, like that was not God's perfect image, and like that's a crazy concept to even like master or try to explain, because just like thinking about how we are now, like they were exact opposite. They were literally they were the literal walking image of perfection.
Yes.
And we're kind of the downgrade, I guess.
Yeah, a lot of downgrades, unfortunately. But what is next? Let's see. It's the time Adam and Eve commit suicide. Now, people, please do not do this. There is a greater plan out there. I know times are tough sometimes. Trust me. Depression is horrible, but do not do this. They were the only exception. Adam and Eve. They actually committed suicide multiple times because Adam thought that was the only way he could redeem himself. Funny thing is that God told him that he would redeem himself instead. So here we have Lexi, who's going to give us a little insight.
Okay, so this is... What chapter is this?
Chapter 21.
Chapter 21. I can't read Roman numerals. And this is Adam and Eve attempt suicide. Then Adam and Eve went in search of the garden, and the heat beat like a flame on their faces, and they sweated from the heat and wept before the Lord. But the place where they wept was nigh unto a high mountain, facing the western gate of the garden. Then Adam threw himself down from the top of that mountain. His face was torn from flesh, and was flayed. Much blood flowed from him, and he was night until death. Meanwhile, Eve remained standing on the mountain, weeping over him, thus lying. And she said, I wish to not live after him, for all that he has did to himself was through me. Then she threw herself after him, and was torn and scorched by stones, and remained lying as dead. But the merciful God, who looks upon his creatures, looked upon Adam and Eve as they lay dead, and sent his word unto them, and raised them, and said to Adam, O Adam, All this misery which thou hast wrought upon thyself will not avail against my rule, neither will it alter the covenant of 500,000 years.
And yeah, that's the time Adam and Eve attempt suicide, and you can see it even mentions God coming in 5,500 years to redeem mankind, but we don't really see that in the Old Testament. We don't really see. People ask, "Where's Christ in the Old Testament?" Well, he's everywhere. He's just been taken out, unfortunately. Now, another crazy fact about Adam and Eve, they actually met Satan. And even worse, Satan killed them once while they were sleeping. Luke chapter 10, verse 18, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Yahshua HaMashiach, that's the Hebrew name for Jesus Christ. Yahshua actually means Yahweh saves. Yahweh is our God, our Elohim. So Adam and Eve actually met Satan, and they met him. And you went a bit over this, how Satan tricked Eve into going into the water. Do you remember that?
Yeah, the story, like, Adam was already out in the water, correct? And
he was praying.
He was what?
He was praying.
He was praying, and he told Eve not to come out, to not listen to anybody, and the devil ended up tricking her. I don't remember how it was. Did he come as God?
He came as a holy angel, saying, "Eve, God has forgiven you and you and Adam's transgression, and he wishes to meet Adam." And Adam turns around and sees Eve coming his way, and he is mad because he knows she has been fooled again. She is gullible. And in that moment, he's drowning, and while he's about to breathe his last breath, God saves him again. Satan is a deceiver, people. You have to be careful. He is a deceiver. What do we have, fellas? The children of Adam and Eve. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't give of Abel, but do you know who Abel is?
I do.
Do you want to give a little insight?
I'm good.
So, Adam and Eve actually had
a lot of kids.
Well, yes and no. That's up for interpretation.
Well, when I was from my basic like Christian upbringing, I never once knew Cain, Abel, any of the names you see on the screen in front of you. I never once heard of these names. I was
really?
never I never once knew of Adam and Eve having children. Literally the only thing that I was really taught about Adam and Eve in my upbringing was the Garden of Eden and was of sin.
Wow, that's a bit crazy.
Right? There's all these things going from perfection to human, and how they lived for so long and how many times God brought them back.
Yes.
And there's all these things that go into so much depth about them, and I feel it's not just me. I feel especially in a lot of we don't, in modern religion, they don't focus a lot on Adam and Eve, unfortunately.
They should. They need to focus on everything, but
yeah,
it's a lot to
but
cover.
I feel with being the first part of the Bible, I feel it is a major it definitely is a major necessity.
And this is why this book, the first and second books of Adam and Eve, gives a lot more insight into Genesis. But let's talk about Cain and Abel. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel, and Abel was the keeper of sheep, but Cain was the tiller of the ground. And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the garden an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstling of the flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and not unto his offering. But unto Cain and to his offering he had no respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. So we just read that Abel gave her his first of his flocklings and savory fats, and he gave that as an offering to the Lord. And Cain, he gave the lesser fruits of his tilling. And well, the Lord said, I see Abel's offering is more pleasant, so he showed more respect to that. But it was not Cain's fault that he was evil, because it was also the devil's fault. The devil put into Cain's mind, kill thy brother, and he did. But what I didn't understand is that they had another son named Seth. That's the line that we see from Noah to Yahshua HaMashiach, or Jesus Christ. But they also had 3 daughters, because you ask yourself, how did Cain have sex with Eve? I mean, I know it was very incestuous, but just how incestuous? And that's something you don't really get to see in Genesis, that they had 3 daughters.
Yeah, we don't really dwell into that. Like,
not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. And it's really interesting. And I know this is a little bit off topic, but later on I do want to make a video about Enoch. Both Enochs, especially the Seth Enoch, because he did not die, people. He did not die. But I found something very, and I've seen this before, but I want to share it with you guys. Now, again, where is the Messiah in the Old Testament? People, it's right in front of you. Genealogy of Genesis 5 with their Hebrew meaning. Man is appointed mortal sorrow, but blessed God shall come down, teaching his death shall bring the despairing comfort and rest. That's beautiful, because it's from the very beginning, it was all planned. Now, we ask, why all this suffering? Why does God do all this? What does he offer us, though?
Well, I mean, he offers us like eternal paradise. Can
you imagine eternal in your mind?
Like, I mean, honestly, like, like only being like so young, imagine like, like 18 and 23, like we already, like, we sit here and we think, oh my God, like we've already been here like for so long, and we still have hopefully eternity ahead of us, like of paradise.
We're out here yelling YOLO, you only live once, doing this or that, but people, it's not YOLO.
Like,
it's
you
not.
Really, like, and I think like that's a comforting thing, like especially like within, like from going from a non-believer to a believer, like this is a very comforting backbone for religion to me, that knowing like no matter what, like I can always come to Yahweh, and like he's always, as long as I serve him and do my best, like he's promised, like no, like everything that I have to do for him and that he asks of me is worth it, because I know what he has in store for me is greater than what anybody on this earth could ever offer me.
So much greater. He is our loving Father. He is our loving Father. So to the last panel. Poor Adam and Eve. So Adam lived to be 930 years old. That's a long time. A long time.
Like, let me see. Okay, hold on. So how many?
930 years.
930 years. And like the average lifespan, like, is usually like of what, like usually like
70,
like
72.
I'm gonna put like 75.
Okay, that's big.
That's almost 12 and a half lifetimes. Like, can you imagine living this like 12 and a half lifetimes? Like, that's just crazy.
And actually, it's been true since the beginning, and even now, that women live a little longer because Eve lived a little longer than Adam. It doesn't state how old she was. It only states that Adam lived to be 930 years old. In the book, in the first and second book of Adam and Eve, it says that he died on a Friday, the same day he was created. Because remember, the Sabbath is Saturday, so next to last day, with the last day being Saturday, is Friday. So, peace be upon him, Adam, our forefather of humanity, and Eve, our foremother of humanity too. And guys, do you have anything to say?
I mean, I don't know. I just think like all of it's just Adam and Eve is just a really cool subject for me to cover. Like, just
and
in
there's
general.
so much more.
This is 10 out of thousands upon thousands of facts like that. Like, we could sit here for hours like telling people facts about Adam and Eve. Like, pick up a Bible and just read it. Like, you can find whatever you need, whatever you could want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And but I just think it's really cool to be able to discuss that, because I feel like, I don't know if it's more of like the incestuous part, like the churches like don't want to talk about, or what, for whatever reason that they don't dive into Adam and Eve. Like, I didn't know, like, when I was a kid, I didn't know Adam lived to be 930 years old. Like,
shoot.
I never knew, like, they attempted suicide
Let
or
me tell
whatever.
let me tell you a quick fact then right now before we end this episode. Bonus fact: Adam was probably a giant.
Plot twist.
Plot twist. But thank you for listening to I Bit the Apple, episode 3. Shalom, brothers and sisters. May Yahweh bless you. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.